So on Friday, we were looking at chapter 4, right? Does anybody remember anything from chapter 4? Anything special?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Friday class we discussed about eternal education, consequences of action, qualification to receive wisdom, and transcendental wisdom.
Transcendental wisdom, very good. So we should do a karma. That's very nice. Yeah, thank you, Ruchi, for letting us know the most important takeaway from chapter 4 is that we should do a karma. So how does one do a karma? How can you do a karma?
Performing devotional service to the Supreme Lord.
Performing devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Yes, very nice. What else? How did we end the session? Chapter 4. What did we see? So if we have to perform devotional service to the Supreme Lord, what are the ways in which we can, in a very simple manner, begin our devotional service?
We have to chant Harinam.
Yes, we have to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Did we look at some slides on Vishnu Sahasranam?
Yes, Vishnu
Okay.
Sahasranam 3 times chanting equal to Krishna Nam once chanting.
Very nice. That means 3 times of chanting Rama is equal to 1 time chanting of Krishna. So which is more powerful?
Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
Hare Krishna Mahamantra is more powerful than Vishnu Sahasranam. Vishnu Sahasranam is also very powerful. It has a very special place because the Vishnu Sahasranam was spoken by whom?
Bhishma Dev.
Bhishma Dev. Who was he speaking it to?
Yudhishthira.
Yudhishthira. Why was that conversation taking place between Yudhishthira and Bhishma?
Because Yudhishthira was confused how to follow dharma and how.
Yes. He wanted to know what is the best way to run the kingdom. Now in this war, so many people had died. Okay, what is the expectation of the citizens and how can I meet the expectation of the citizens of the world? Because he was not just the ruler of Bharat Bhumi, he was the ruler of the entire world. Prabhupada writes in one of the purports that in those days, many thousands of years ago, Hastinapura was the capital of the whole world. So all of the other smaller kingdoms would have like a super king who they would report to out of Hastinapura. So Yudhishthir was actually taking on that role of being that supreme king of the entire planet Earth. And therefore he was concerned about what's the best way after this war, how can people settle down to leading a peaceful life. So that was his main concern. And therefore Krishna tells him, you please approach my pure devotee Bhishma Dev. So Bhishma Dev is on the bed of arrows and he guides Yudhishthir. Whatever doubts Yudhishthir had, Bhishma Dev is able to clarify those doubts. So just like the Lord spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, actually it reminds me of a question that was asked in our first class by, I think, Dr. Venugopal. He was asking, I'm not convinced why actually Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita only to Arjuna and not to anybody else. So why is it that the other brothers were not confused, but Arjuna was confused? And we had talked about how ultimately Krishna is orchestrating everything. He is very much involved in the life of his devotees. So I was just thinking about that question a few days ago, and I was thinking, in a relationship between two people, there is a level of intimacy in the sense you are close to your closest friend and you can reveal everything to them, right? So Krishna tells Arjuna, because you are my dearest friend, I am revealing the Bhagavad Gita to you. And that is how the 4th chapter starts, where Krishna says, I have already spoken this Bhagavad Gita many millions of years ago to the sun god, Vivaswan. And so now, because you're my very good friend, I'm speaking that to you. So any matter that is highly confidential, you normally will select your best friend to converse with about that. So the Lord is no different. He selected his most confidential devotee among the Pandavas. Who was the closest to Krishna? Was it Yudhishthira or was it Arjuna?
Arjuna.
Arjuna. So it should not come as a surprise that Krishna actually speaks the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna and not to Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira also loved the Lord very much. But Arjuna and Krishna had a much closer relationship with each other. So Krishna selects his closest friend to speak the Bhagavad Gita. Now, does that mean Krishna has not spoken the Bhagavad Gita before? According to chapter 4? No, he has spoken the Bhagavad Gita. Even if you read Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna speaks the Bhagavad Gita to Uddhava also, right? Who is Uddhava? Does anybody know?
Krishna's brother.
cousin.
Krishna's cousin. They were also very close to each other. So in the Bhagavatam, there is a section in the Bhagavatam called the Uddhava Gita. There also Krishna speaks the Gita, but this time to his very close cousin called Uddhava. So we should not question why the Lord speaks this way or to whom and why not to another person. So these things by logic we will not be able to understand. The Lord has his own reasons for speaking the Bhagavad Gita to whoever he chooses. We should value the message and not worry about who the message was spoken to. Because ultimately, whatever the Lord speaks, even to Arjuna, that's valuable for you and me, because we are going to learn a lot from it, isn't it? Because the Lord wants you to apply that in your life. So far, we've seen that in chapter 1, Arjuna was confused. Therefore, we said that single word summary was lamentation. Lamenting means complaining. I can't do it like that. Then in chapter 2, Krishna speaks Atma Jnana or Atma Tattva to Arjuna. By speaking Atma Jnana, Krishna is re-establishing for Arjuna his real identity as Atma. He's not this body. And then in the 3rd chapter, in the 2nd chapter itself, Krishna introduces Swadharma and Sanatana Dharma or Nitya Dharma. So to explain these duties and responsibilities in relation to these two dharmas, we saw chapter 3, which was called Karma Yoga, where Krishna talks about our prescribed duties and responsibilities. If we follow those prescribed duties and responsibilities, then we will be happy. Those were the instructions that Krishna gives. Then in the 4th chapter, in order for us to perform our duty properly, we need some knowledge, correct? Just like, let us say if you want to be a systems analyst or whatever, a computer engineer, a software engineer, then you have to develop the qualifications in order to perform that duty very nicely, in order to perform that job very nicely. So similarly, if we have to perform for Krishna, our work very nicely, then we need to know what is the qualifications we need. We need some knowledge, right? So in the 4th chapter, Krishna talks about this transcendental knowledge. How does Krishna define this transcendental knowledge in chapter 4? He calls it a science, the science of the soul and the supersoul. And the fact that there is a deep, eternal relationship between the soul and the supersoul. So now, keeping all of this in mind, Krishna is going to take this a step further for us. So let us look at chapter 5. So chapter 5 is titled, what is the title of chapter 5 in Sanskrit as per the poster that we shared?
Krishna consciousness.
Karma
Action.
Sannyasa Yoga.
Karma Sannyasa Yoga, which means now action in Krishna consciousness. So that means we were all along thinking, okay, Krishna has told us what our duties and responsibilities are and how we should perform them and what's the knowledge we need to have. And so now Krishna is going to say, okay, how do you actually perform a karma? That is going to be the topic today, because we looked at three terminologies: karma, akarma, and vikarma. Karma meaning we fulfill our prescribed duties and responsibilities. Vikarma means we violate the scriptures, we don't follow any scriptures, we don't have faith or belief in the scriptures or in the presence of the Supreme Lord. Akarma means doing everything for the satisfaction of Krishna. So that is what we were looking at. So here, the single word summary for today's chapter is results, which means if I do a karma, what will be the result that I get? So we already know that Krishna has said, if we do a karma, we will go to the spiritual world. All of our sins will be wiped out. All of our punya also will be wiped out. So let us look at how chapter 5 begins. So again here, Arjuna is a little bit confused. So that is how the chapter begins. So we're going to look at 4 sections. We're going to look at the water and the lotus leaf analogy in this particular chapter. Krishna talks about 3 different types of doers. How some of the devotees of the Lord develop this deep love, not just for the Lord, but also for all of humanity. And therefore, they have what is called this equal vision. They see everything as belonging to Krishna, everybody as belonging to Krishna. And then this chapter will conclude with what is called the peace formula. So how does chapter 5 begin? Again, Arjuna is confused. So you remember, even in chapter 3, Arjuna was confused. He thought Krishna was telling him, you don't have to fight, or you have a choice between fighting and not fighting. But really, that is not what Krishna was telling Arjuna. Similarly here, Arjuna is asking again the same question of Krishna, but in a slightly different context. So here Arjuna is saying, oh Krishna, first of all, you ask me to renounce work. And then again, you recommend work with devotion. Now, will you kindly tell me definitely which of the 2 is more beneficial? And the Lord responds by saying, the renunciation of work. Okay. The renunciation of work, just give me 1 second, and work and devotion are both good for liberation, but of the 2, work and devotional service is better than renunciation of work. So what is the confusion for Arjuna here? Because the word akarma has 2 meanings. Arjuna was thinking akarma means inactivity, meaning not doing anything. But that's not what Krishna was explaining all along. So the difference that Arjuna is trying to figure out here, and that Krishna is trying to help him with, is that akarma means, one meaning of akarma is, you do all your duties and responsibilities, but you are completely detached from the results, which means you do it simply because it pleases Krishna and you are not looking for a particular result, success or failure or whatever it is. So you're not attached to the results of your work. That is called Nishkama Karma Yoga. Another meaning of akarma is just simply doing bhakti. Bhakti means devotional service to the Lord. So Prabhupada explains that bhakti means you are actively involved in serving Krishna. Bhakti does not mean that you are taking rest. You're not doing anything, you're only thinking of Krishna. But that is not bhakti. Bhakti means you're actively involved in your duties and responsibilities, but at the same time, you're doing everything for the pleasure of Krishna. Hence, Krishna is saying, both the things are good, which is working but giving up the results and doing bhakti yoga. Krishna says both of them are good for liberation or for moksha. But Krishna is saying of the two, which is better? Devotional service is better than renunciation of work. Okay. So akarma literally has two meanings. One is renunciation of the results. Two is renunciation of, or rather, devotional service, attachment to Krishna. So you could say one is detachment from results and the other one is attachment to Krishna. So Nishkama Karma Yoga is detachment from results, whereas devotion is attachment to Krishna. So it's a very significant difference between the two. But Krishna is saying both of them will give you the results, but in my opinion, being attached to me is better than being detached from results. So here Krishna is saying, Sanyasastu mahabaho dukkhamaptum ayogatah yoga yukto munir brahma nachirena dhigachati. Merely renouncing all activities yet not engaging in the devotional service of the Lord cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. So Krishna is saying merely not being detached from the results of everything that you do, but not actually doing bhakti, he says it's not going to make you happy. You will just be satisfied that you're not attached to the results. But that does not mean you are blissful. So Krishna's point is, well, do you want to just be detached from the results, or is your goal actually to be really happy, to be really blissful? But if you want to be really blissful, then Krishna is saying you have to do bhakti. So Krishna is saying if you apply your thought to this, then if you do bhakti, very soon Krishna is saying you will come back to me. That is essentially what Krishna is saying in this particular shloka. So if you are detached from results or you perform some other type of activity, then you will get results, but it will take you a long time. Yeah. So let us look at pastime. This pastime is actually mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9. There is a very powerful rishi by the name of Saubhari Rishi. He was so powerful, he had mystical powers also. So somehow or the other, there was an interaction between Shaubhara Muni and Garudadev. And Shaubhara Muni laid a curse on Garudadev. And Garudadev is a great devotee of the Lord. So unfortunately for Shaubhara Muni, although he was a very powerful rishi, he had committed an offense against a devotee of the Lord. So he is such a powerful rishi that once he was doing 1,000-year tapas under the water in the Yamuna river. That means he was so powerful for 1,000 years, he could hold his breath. We cannot imagine what that means to hold one's breath for 1,000 years. And maximum, maybe we can hold our breath for 7-8 seconds underwater. But Shaubhari Muni was so powerful, he was meditating within the Yamuna river for 1,000 years. One day, he opened his eyes and he sees a couple of fish mating with each other. And suddenly, his whole perspective changes. He's saying, hey, look, even these two fish are enjoying with each other so nicely. They seem to be so happy. Maybe even I should go in search of a woman so I can also enjoy. So immediately, just by seeing those two fish populating, he immediately comes out of the water. He approaches the king over there. Mandata is the king's name, who had 50 beautiful daughters. So if you are doing tapas underwater for 1,000 years, can you imagine what your physical condition would be? First of all, you'll be smelling. Second, your skin and all will be completely shriveled up. So he was looking very old and feeble and smelling. Still, he approaches the king and he says, "Give me one of your daughters in marriage." Now, of course, it's always a dicey situation when some powerful rishi comes and asks you for something. You cannot say no. So the king was thinking, what am I going to do? Which of my daughters is going to select this man? Just look at his condition. Yeah, he's a great rishi, but he looks so old. So the king said, you can marry any one of my daughter. Whichever daughter of mine is ready to marry you, I'm okay with it. So Shaubari Rishi understood that his looks were the problem. So he tells the king, tomorrow I will come and maybe, one of your daughters will be ready to marry me. So Shaubari Rishi comes the next day and he's looking effulgent because he has mystical powers, right? So he was looking like a very young, beautiful, handsome man. And now all 50 daughters started fighting, saying, no, I want him as my husband. So they were fighting with each other, trying to get Shaubari Rishi as the husband. So eventually all 50 girls marry Shaubari Rishi. He constructs a beautiful palace for them. He lives with all 50 of them, has many children with them. And that, like this, he's leading his life. So what happened to his 1,000-year tapas? He didn't succeed. So just imagine putting in so much effort and then all of a sudden you're not able to fulfill the purpose of the tapas. So what can we learn from this particular pastime? One is that we should not offend a devotee of the Lord, because if you offend a devotee of the Lord will put you in a situation where your tapas will go for a toss. Everything that you did will be lost. Eventually, Shaubari Rishi realized, why did I give up my 1,000-year tapas? Simply because I saw two fish mating with each other. So I wasted my life like this, enjoying myself with 50 girls, 50 princesses, had all these children. It's time for me to go back to my tapas. So he leaves everything behind and starts his tapas again. So that's why Krishna is saying renunciation also can lead to liberation. But between renunciation and bhakti yoga, Krishna is saying bhakti yoga is better. It is an easier path than doing this kind of intense renunciation that Shaubari Rishi was engaged in. So essentially, Krishna is saying if one has to work without attachment, it is also good. That is why Krishna uses the analogy in the second chapter of how water stays on a lotus leaf. Water remains a globule, it doesn't get attached to the lotus leaf. The lotus leaf moves a little bit, the water globule will go off. So Krishna is saying, Brahmanyadhaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha lipyate na sapapena padma patram ivam bhasa. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. So that means Krishna is saying, if you perform your duty without attachment and surrendering all the results to the Lord, then you will not have to incur any sinful reactions. So if you look at it, Arjuna fought the war not because he wanted to. Arjuna fought because Krishna wanted him to fight. Krishna asks him to. Therefore, because he follows Krishna's instructions, there are no reactions. So if you become an instrument in the Lord's hand and do exactly as the Lord asks you to do, then there is no punya and there is no papa. That means the only thing that is there for you is akarma. So this is how you do akarma. Whatever duties you're performing, you use the results in the service of the Lord. Then Krishna is saying there will be no sin for you whatsoever. So this is a deeper understanding of what akarma means, so that you can also have a peaceful, sinless life by following Krishna's instructions. So here in this shloka, which is the next section of this chapter 5, Krishna is talking about the three doers. And let's understand what this means. Sarva karmani manasa sanyasyaste sukham bhaji navadvare pure dehi naiva kuruvanna karayan. Krishna is saying, when the embodied soul, having controlled his nature and renounces all acts by the mind in a city of 9 doors, without cause, or he resides happily in the material world. So in this particular section, Krishna is talking about how this body has 9 different gates, right? Your 2 eyes, your ears, your nostrils, your mouth, and then your evacuating organs, etc. So this becomes the body of 9 gates. So this way we can, if you are able to control your nature by renouncing all activities for the pleasure of Krishna, then Krishna says you can be completely enlightened. So in this particular shloka, we are going to go back to chapter 3 to understand what this really means. So we didn't cover this shloka in chapter 3, but we're covering it here. So Krishna is saying, Indriyan paranyahu indriyebhyah param manaha manasastu para buddhihi yabuddhev paratastu saha. The active senses are higher than matter, and the mind is higher than the senses. The intellect is higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is higher than the understanding. Okay. So let us look at this in a deeper manner. That means matter is lower than the senses. So let us take one example. So I have a question for you. You can respond to it in the chat. So the question is, do you want a BMW car or do you want your kidneys? What would you choose? BMW car is very nice, but the choice is between your car and your kidneys. Okay, so you'll choose your kidney. So what is the difference between the BMW car and your kidney? Which is matter and which is your body? Because Krishna is saying that senses are higher than matter. So is matter the BMW, or in this case, another matter you could say is kidney. Kidney is also temporary, right? At the time of death, you have to give it up. But you could say it becomes part of your senses. Your senses is temporary. So kidney is part of your senses because you process, your body requires your kidney. So your senses are many. Your body, your physical body comprises of 5 different senses: your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, and your skin, through which you experience feelings. So we can understand clearly with this simple example that our kidneys matter to us more than the BMW car. We'd rather have our 2 kidneys than a BMW car. Because without the kidney, you cannot live. So that means your senses are greater than matter. Now, let us say you have everything. You have property, you have house, you have wealth, you have everything. Your senses are working very fine. But then your mind is very disturbed. Which would you prefer? A peaceful mind or all the wealth and happiness in the world? I mean, you can't have happiness if you don't have a peaceful mind. So we know then the mind is greater than the senses. Because if your mind is not peaceful, and if your mind is very disturbed, then other people may call you a mad person. So you can have all the wealth, You can have a very perfectly functioning body, but if your mind is not stable, then you could consider yourself to be mad. So now we understand mind is higher than the senses. But if you want to control your mind and if you want a peaceful mind, then the intelligence becomes higher than the mind. So the intelligence has to actually help control the mind. But finally, Krishna is saying even the soul is higher than intelligence. The soul is superior to the intelligence. It is superior to your mind. It is superior to the senses. And it is superior to matter. So in this way, Krishna is telling us the soul is the most important thing because it is eternal. Now, what is interesting is that it appears that our body has trapped the soul. The soul is actually a free bird. It can go wherever it wants, whenever it wants. But then why is it trapped in the body then? If the soul is only looking for Krishna, the soul is always searching, where is my Supreme Lord? So why is the soul trapped in the body? What is the answer to this question? Why is the soul trapped in the body? It is free. Yes, it's right. It's because of our material desires. The soul is occupying this body because of our material desires. So really Krishna is saying the soul should be the master, but what has happened is that the mind and intelligence have made the soul the servant. And when the mind and intelligence is trying to control the destiny of the soul, then the soul is experiencing chaos. Imagine if the servant becomes the master. What will happen in life? So Krishna is saying the soul should be the master. The problem starts for us when the servant becomes the master. Therefore, Krishna talks about this in the 42nd shloka of the 3rd chapter. And we are going to go back to the 2nd chapter again and pick up 2 shlokas from there. Dhyayato vishayan pumsah sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bhijayate. By contemplating sensory objects, man develops an attachment to them. From that attachment springs lust, and from lust comes anger. In the next shloka, Krishna says, Krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibhramaha, smriti bhramshat buddhinashaha, buddhinashat pranashyati. From anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So when the intelligence is lost, the soul is further trapped because it's just going to go into another body and to another body and to another body. So everything, the problem begins when the senses are contemplating on matter like sense objects. So for example, if the eyes are looking at a beautiful dress in a shop, then you begin obsessing, oh, I want that dress. It's so beautiful. If you're passing by a sweet shop and if you're attracted to sweets, then your mouth starts watering. It'll be so nice if I could have those sweets. So the problem is when the senses look at the sense objects and it is not able to have it, it develops anger. So you become angry. So say, for example, a very young boy is interested in a bicycle. He sees a nice bicycle in the shop. And before you know it, he's constantly thinking about it. Oh, I want that bike. I want that bike. I want my father to buy that bike for me. It'll be so nice. I can go drive, ride the bike here and there. I can take my friends with me. My friends will be so jealous of me if I buy a nicer bike than them. So many thoughts come in our mind, even for a young child. A young child also becomes obsessed with purchasing things. So the boy goes and asks his father, you please buy me this bike. I've fallen in love with this bike. I'll be the happiest person on this earth. I promise I will not ask you for anything more. I just want this bike. And the father tries to tell the son, I don't have the funds for it. We cannot afford it now. Maybe later. Typically, that's what parents do. They say, maybe later, not now. Or the parent will say, I will link it to something. You get good marks, I will give you this. Or you do well here, I will do that. So sometimes there is a exchange of ideas between the parent and the child. Under what circumstances the child will get what it wants if the parent gets what he or she wants. So hearing this, the boy becomes very, very angry. And what happens? That desire has led to anger because the desire has not been fulfilled. So that has led to a fight with the father. So he will tell his father, I don't love you anymore. You're not my father. I will not eat anymore. I will run away from home. All of these youngsters may do with their parents, saying, I don't love you. I don't care. And you don't love me. That's why you're not buying things for me. What happened? A mere desire caused so much anger, it leads to fights within families. And pretty soon, in more severe cases than the simple example, the love is lost and betrayed. When expectations are there and those expectations are not met, Krishna says it leads to anger. And that anger leads to delusion. And when you are deluded, you've lost your intelligence. And when you've lost your intelligence, how can you make the right decision? If your intelligence is lost, you will not be able to make the right decision. So therefore, what happens when you have a desire? Krishna explains that there are three doers here, the Jiva, the Paramatma, and Prakriti. So the Jivatma will always have desires. And he will use his free will to try his best to fulfill those desires. For example, Shaubari Muni would use his free will to try and marry a girl so that he can enjoy himself. Or a little boy will try to do his best to convince his father that he needs a bike. So a Jivatma is always desiring. If you have a phone now, then you want to purchase you want to upgrade your phone. You want to upgrade so many things in your life. So a Jivatma has desires. So what does the Paramatma do when the Jivatma desires? The Paramatma will consider your desire and decide whether to sanction it or not. What is the decision making that the Paramatma looks at? Whether the Paramatma should sanction your desire or not, that is based on your past karma. So what is the role of Prakriti? If the Lord has sanctioned the Jivatma's desire, then Prakriti helps the Jivatma experience that desire, and therefore the Jivatma's desire gets fulfilled. If Paramatma does not sanction the Jivatma's desire, then Prakriti does not have anything to do with that. It's like your file is rejected by the Supreme Lord. So let's use a simple example to go understand this together. Let us say you have entered a bank and you are trying to withdraw some money. So you filled out the cash withdrawal slip and you've withdrawn, say, 5,000 rupees. There is a stranger standing next to you, and the stranger is asking the teller, the person who gives you cash once you provide your withdrawal slip. The stranger next to you is asking the cashier, you please give me 5,000 also. The cashier asks him, but can you please give me your account number? And I will check your account number. If you have money in there, I will give you. So the man starts arguing, saying, but why did you give that person 5,000 rupees? Why can't you give me 5,000 rupees? So the teller very patiently explains to the other man, see, whatever you've deposited in the bank is what you're going to withdraw. So this man has deposited some money, so he is able to withdraw 5,000. So if you also deposit like that, you can withdraw. But bank is not meant to just give you money without you having deposited anything in it. So similarly, if you have not deposited adequate punya in your account, you can't withdraw. That's when the Lord denies your request. So let us say you want to buy a BMW car. That seems like such a mundane thing. But anyway, we'll take this example. If you want to purchase a BMW car, then you need the funds to purchase the BMW car. Or at least you have to have access to financing to purchase a BMW car. Right? So if you go with this desire to the Lord, but you have not deposited adequate punya in your account, the Lord is not going to sanction it. Because you have not deposited anything to withdraw. Just like in the case of this person going to the bank teller and saying, give me also 5,000 rupees. You're not going to get 5,000, not unless you have deposited 5,000 or have more than 5,000 in the account. So essentially, the Lord's role here is simply to sanction or deny your desire. That is all. He looks at what is in your balance, and according to that, he sanctions it. The minute the Lord sanctions it, then Prakriti comes into the picture and helps the Jivatma experience and fulfill that desire. So somebody has to implement the Lord's order, right? The Lord's order is implemented by Prakriti. So hence here, Krishna in the 5th chapter is talking about 3 doers. The first doer is the Jivatma, because the Jivatma has a desire. The Paramatma will either sanction or decline. If the Paramatma sanctions, Prakriti will implement. And this is how a Jivatma's desire is fulfilled. If the Jivatma's desire is not sanctioned by the Lord, then what happens to the Jivatma? Just like that little boy got frustrated because his father said no, pretty soon he becomes angry and he is going to try one more time to try and convince his father. Similarly, the Jivatma will try more and more to get what it does not, was not sanctioned by the Lord. So what is it that we have to remember from here? That even though there are these 3 doers, that ultimately it is your own desire that is determining your destiny. So your desire dictates what you're going to be in your next life. Therefore, the concept of karma then takes such a huge importance. So here, then Krishna will say, okay, that's fine. Now you've understood how everything functions. If you desire, if you have the credit, I will sanction. If you don't have the credit, I will not sanction. So Krishna is saying, actually, your desires and your enjoyment and suffering, you are the cause of it. I am only implementing what you want and trying my best to help you, whatever it is. So Krishna is saying, ideally, all the Jivatmas should come to the stage of equal vision. But then Krishna also knows that not all of us will get there in our journey. And therefore Krishna says, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Shunichaiva Shvapakecha Panditas Samadarshinaha. All of us have Paramatma residing within us. All of us, no exception. It could be a Hindu body, a Muslim body, a Christian body. It could be the body of an elephant. It could be the body of a cockroach. It could be the body of a tree. It could be the body of a fish. There is a Paramatma within each. But who is actually able to see this clearly? Krishna says, the humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. So Krishna is saying only a great sage can see the Paramatma within all Jivatmas. So a great sage will not say, oh, that person is a Muslim, or this person is a Christian, or this person is a Hindu, that person is an atheist. A great sage will only see, here comes a Jivatma who is suffering just like me. And how wonderful the Paramatma has not abandoned this Jivatma. The Paramatma is constantly accompanying the Jivatma, waiting for the Jivatma to turn around and ask the Paramatma for shelter, for help. So Paramatma also is not a Muslim Paramatma or a Hindu Paramatma or whatever. Paramatma is Paramatma. There is only one Paramatma and he is there in all of us. So there were some birds that were living on top of a temple. They had constructed their nest. Pretty soon they saw that these human beings have constructed this, all these platforms because they were getting ready to paint the temple. And so the birds realized, okay, these humans are looking like they are going to ask us to vacate. So they vacated the temple premises themselves and moved to a nearby mosque. Pretty soon, the mosque was also getting painted. So the birds pick up and move to the top of the church. And then the church was being painted. So the birds come back to the temple that has already been painted. So this little bird is observing two men standing at the entrance to the temple, fighting with each other about whose religion is superior. And they were having a major argument. So the little bird asks the mother, why are these two people, why are these human beings fighting? And the mother says, oh, they've gone mad. So the little chick asks the mother, so why are we not fighting? And the mother says, that's because we are living on a higher plane. That is why we are not fighting. And the mother is explaining to the chick, see, these two men, they don't have any sense. What are they seeing? They are only seeing external differences. And therefore they are mad. So that is what happens even to human beings. We tend to see external differences. And based on those external differences, we tend to discriminate. Whatever that discrimination based on caste or based on educational background, based on religion, it doesn't matter. That is why Krishna is saying, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, Brahmane Gavihastini. That is why a sage does not look at the outer body and make a decision that this body is superior to that body. Because the sage is only seeing deep within that there is a Jivatma and Paramatma in each of those bodies. So for the sage, the external dress or the attire does not matter. So a businessman, a very rich businessman, a well-educated businessman was taking a ride in a boat. And he had to cross the river. And he was quizzing the boatsman as he was taking the ride. He asked the boatsman, Acha, you never studied in school? And the boatsman said, no, I didn't have the opportunity to study. And the boatsman says, oh, you missed out so much. Then the boatsman asked, did your parents leave a lot of wealth behind for you? And the boatsman said, no. So like this, the businessman was quizzing the boatsman, and every time the boatsman would say no. And the businessman would tell the boatsman, you're so unfortunate. You couldn't do any of these things. See, if you had just studied and put your mind to it, you could have been so successful. Why are you wasting your time being a boatsman? Why can't you look for a better quality of life? You're such a failure because you didn't even try. The boatsman just kept quiet. As they were crossing the river, water started entering the boat. And the businessman starts to panic. And the boatsman asks him, do you know how to swim? And the businessman said, no, I never learned how to swim. So the boatman said, all your life you've been so successful in so many ways. You're wealthy, you're highly educated. But what's the point of your life? You don't know how to swim. So the perspective completely changes as to who's qualified, who's not qualified. Krishna is not looking at your external qualifications to take you back. Krishna is looking to see what is the relationship that you have with him. So we shouldn't waste our life based on externals. So hence Krishna concludes this chapter with how can we all have a peaceful life? So the last shloka in chapter 5 is Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam Jnatva Mam Shantim Richati. Krishna says a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So we call this the peace formula shloka. Krishna is telling you how you can lead a peaceful life. So there are 3 terms that Krishna has used. Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam. Anytime you do any yajna, normally that yajna will end with the words Krishna Arpanamastu, meaning everything is for you, Krishna. It doesn't matter what kind of yajna you do, this is recited. What is Krishna saying? Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam. Krishna is saying, whatever yajna you do, whatever tapas you do, I am the person who's enjoying it. I am the person who accepts it. Because you're doing it for my pleasure. Therefore, I accept it first. Then Krishna says, therefore, we have to understand that Krishna is the real enjoyer. Krishna enjoys it most when you do everything for his pleasure. Then you bring a great deal of joy and you invoke the mercy of the Lord. When you understand, that is exactly what Krishna is saying. Ultimately, you have to understand, I am the only enjoyer. That is why in chapter 3, Krishna said, work must be performed as a sacrifice for the pleasure of Vishnu. He didn't say work must be performed as a sacrifice for Vishnu. He says for the pleasure of Vishnu, you must work. Hence, Krishna is expanding on that theme that he brought up in chapter 3 by saying here, he is the actual enjoyer. He accepts what you have offered him with love. The second term Krishna uses is Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. I am the controller of everything. So in that doer slide that we saw, the Jivatma is the doer, the Paramatma is the doer, Prakriti is the doer. 3 entities acting. Krishna is saying, ultimately, I am the real controller. I orchestrate things. But I orchestrate things as per your desire. Which means if our desire is to be a devotee of Krishna, then Krishna will help us abundantly to become a better devotee. That is why I mentioned a pure devotee of the Lord will feel terribly embarrassed to go in front of the Lord and ask them to save them. Hence the Pandavas don't even whisper to the Lord saying, you are our great friend, how can you betray us like this by allowing us to suffer? Because they accept that the Lord has a plan for them. Ultimately. That's how much love and affection they have for the Lord. And the Lord, in turn, wants to demonstrate to us how great his devotees are. They accept all kinds of suffering without any complaint. That is why they are accepted as the great devotees of the Lord. Just look at Prahlad Maharaj. His father tried to kill him in so many different ways, but he was just focused on the Lord. He was not disturbed, he was not perturbed. Even when the Lord appears to him, how great a devotee is Prahlad, he asks the Lord, please forgive my father. He's lost his way. No enmity, even to those who are, externally speaking, the cause for your suffering. So Krishna is saying, ultimately, I am the real controller, and you will see this in chapter 11, where Krishna will show his Vishwarupa Darshan to Arjuna. Krishna also uses the term Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam. Krishna says, ultimately, I am the best friend for all Jivatmas. See, we all have so many best friends. No? In kindergarten, you would have had a best friend. In school, you would have had best friends. In college, you will have best friends. And maybe in your office, you would have had some best friends. But those best friends kept changing. Very rarely do we still have very good relations with our childhood friends because we've all grown apart. We don't maintain those relationships. Even in families, we may think my husband will save me, my wife will save me, my parents will save me. Nobody will save you. Actually, only the Lord is there to save you. So one by one, family members will depart. Ultimately, only the Lord is there for you. So that is why Krishna is saying, Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam. For all Jivatmas, I am their only friend. I am their best friend. How do we know that Krishna is our best friend? We will discover this when we come to chapter 7. Krishna is saying, I have the best interests in my heart for all of the Jivatmas. But I can only help if they seek my help. If they don't want me in their life, how can I help them? They have to ask for help. Even if that help means asking Krishna to remove impediments from your life. But what does a pure devotee like Kunti Devi do? When the Lord is getting ready to leave for Hastinapur, after they have won the battle, Kunti Maharani, there's some beautiful prayers from Kunti Maharani in the Bhagavatam, where she tells the Lord, my dear Lord, please don't abandon me. She says, only when you give me troubles am I able to think of you. Now that victory is ours, we will forget you very easily because now we will get absorbed in all of the wealth and the trappings of being a king. And she is asking the Lord, you please send me more troubles, because if you don't send me troubles, I know that I am so weak, I will forget you. As long as you are keeping us in trouble, we were attached to your lotus feet. The minute everything is resolved and we are happy, then we are going to forget you. So there is no devotee who will pray like this. Pray to the Lord asking for suffering. But that is Kunti Maharani's position. And the Lord wants to show how great his devotees are, that they are asking for suffering just so they have one more opportunity to remember the Lord. Yeah. So Krishna is saying here in the last Sloka of the 5th chapter that he is the best friend for all of us. He is the real controller and he is the real enjoyer. So this is what we have to remember in chapter 5. This is the peace formula. Krishna is saying, if you understood what my role is in your life, then automatically you will be at peace. There is no need for you to be concerned about anything at all because I will take over your life. I will orchestrate things for you. But you have to have trust and faith in me. You have to have trust and faith in me. Then you can experience the Lord's mercy. Our dear Srila Prabhupada also, when he departs from India on a commercial ship heading to Boston, he really did not know what to expect. He went with 40 rupees in his pocket. And he was carrying the Bhagavatam, which he had translated, the 3 cantos. And with such great humility, Prabhupada says, I am not going to America. The Srimad Bhagavatam, which means the Lord himself is going to America, I am just going as the servant of Srimad Bhagavatam. That is the humility of great devotees. They don't have this concept of I am the doer. The Lord is going to America in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Suta Goswami tells the sages, when the sages of Naimisharanya ask him those 6 questions, one of the questions they ask is, now that Lord Krishna has left for his abode, where did Dharma take shelter? And Suta Goswami responds by saying, Dharma has taken shelter in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. The Lord has entered the Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, Prabhupada says, since the Lord himself is traveling to the US, I'm just accompanying him as the servant. So there is, if you read the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada will explain in the very first shloka of the first canto of the first chapter that there is something called the book Bhagavatam, which is about all of the pastimes of the Lord with his devotees. And there is a person, Bhagavata. And both are non-different. But the person Bhagavata serves the book Bhagavatam. How do they serve the book Bhagavatam? By just sharing the pastimes of the Lord and doing Harikatha. So when Prabhupada arrived on the shores of Boston, he writes he had suffered 2 heart attacks on his voyage. So he was quite weak, and he told the Lord, I really don't know what your plan is for me, as he was on that ship. He said, if you give me 1 more heart attack, I'll be dead, and I will not be able to complete my seva to my Guru. So Prabhupada, before he lands in Boston, he writes a beautiful prayer to the Lord. He's telling the Lord, you are the ultimate puppeteer. I'm just a puppet in your hands. Whatever you want to do with me, you please do with me. If you want to make me dance, make me dance. If you want to make me speak in such a way that the foreigners, he's telling the Lord, you are sending me to a place where people are just completely focused on enjoying and material desires. He's telling the Lord, how will they understand what I speak? So you please make my speech in such a way that they will be able to understand and follow. So he's telling the Lord, I am entering the lion's den. You have to help me here, because I don't know what your plan is. So he tells the Lord, you make me dance. You make my speech suitable for those in the United States so they can understand this message of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. So this is what the Lord wants. The Lord wants us to understand that he is our best friend. He's the real controller, and he is the real enjoyer. So that's the essence of the 5th chapter, which is, what is the peace formula if we want to achieve this level of, bliss even in this current life when we are surrounded by sufferings. So that was the essence of chapter 5. I'm happy to take any questions now that you may have. Hare Krishna. So you can raise your hands.
Yeah, this is a Dr. Venugopal from USA.
Yes, Hare Krishna, yes.
Yeah. Correct me if my thinking is wrong, because you are talking about karma, akarma, like that.
Yes.
So then the Panchali's sari was disrobed by Dushasana. There, the Bhishma and other elders, they are all there.
Yes.
They are sitting. And they didn't do anything. And I think that is not karma, that is not agarma, it is vikarma. Because by being silent, they encourage, they allowed that, what you call, adharma to prevail. So it is vikarma, that is what I think. I would like you to just explain, clarify.
Okay. So the particular episode where Draupadi Devi was disrobed in the presence of all of the other elders in the Sabha, where Dhritarashtra does not stop Dushasan, Dronacharya does not utter a word, and Bhishma Dev also does not help. Actually, there is a conversation that happens where Draupadi is asking each of them, how is it that as elders you are staying quiet? In this particular instance, the Lord again wanted to show that until you come to him for help, you should not rely on help for anybody else. So Prabhupada writes a very beautiful purport, in Srimad Bhagavatam. When Uttara has Parikshit in her womb, and Ashwatthama has released the Brahmastra, or what you could call as equivalent to a nuclear weapon, she goes running directly to Krishna. There is a beautiful shloka where she is telling Krishna, hey Krishna, this is the only remaining, future for this kingdom. The child that I'm carrying within my womb is going to be the benefactor of the kingdom after Yudhishthira and others are done with their rulership. And she runs to the Lord. She does not approach the Pandavas. She does not approach Yudhishthira. She does not approach anybody else. She goes directly to the Lord. And she tells the Lord, if you want to protect me, whether you protect me or not, I am not interested, but please protect the child. So Krishna wants to simply demonstrate that the devotee, a great devotee, is always dependent on the Lord for everything, anything. In the case of Draupadi, what happened was she thought, okay, her husbands will save her. But then she realizes actually her husbands had no right to put her up. Who started this? Who triggered this? Her husbands, when they lost their kingdom and they became servants of Duryodhana, then they didn't have any more rights over her. So therefore, Draupadi says, first of all, this anyaya happened because you put me up for the dice match. After you lost everything, you didn't have any business doing that. So first issue is with Yudhishthir Maharaj and the other Pandavas as well. That Yudhishthir Maharaj, when he lost his kingdom, he was no longer a king. That means he didn't have any entitlement to put up Draupadi. So it starts from there. But anyway, later on, Bhishma Dev says, after all, I am dependent on Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra for so many years. I have eaten their food. When I eat the food of people who are adharmic, at some point in time, adharma will also enter my consciousness. So he is also expressing his helplessness. Similarly, Dronacharya, expressing his helplessness. So in this situation, Draupadi has sought the help of so many others, including she begins with trying to protect herself. Her last resort is Krishna. So even she asks Krishna, why did you not protect me? And he said, well, why did you not ask for me first? I was ready to come and help you. But you are depending on your husbands and the elders. So you have to depend on me. So this is the concept of full surrender for a devotee. So although Draupadi is a great devotee of the Lord, she was always thinking of Krishna. Krishna always protected her. Even when Durvasa Muni comes, and they're all panicking, thinking we've already eaten, and Durvasa Muni, that Akshay Patra has been washed. Once Draupadi has eaten, nothing can be produced for that day. But Krishna comes to save her because they are panicking. They're thinking, they know what's going to happen. If Durvasa Muni comes and there is no feast provided to him and his 60,000 disciples. So at that time, Krishna comes, he finds one grain of rice stuck to the pot. And when he accepts that, he says, I am full, and immediately Durvasa Muni and others feel full. So some of this is Leela, but some of this we have to understand it in the right perspective, that the Lord is always using his devotees to teach us lessons. that we should be completely dependent on the Lord. Yes, but does that mean anything and everything that is happening in modern day world with women being betrayed in so many different ways, is that acceptable? No, it's not acceptable. It is the duty of the king to protect the chastity. Of course, it's duty of the husband first to protect the chastity of his wife, followed by the rulers. Right? In this case, both were not able to do it. Who was the ruler then? It was the Dhritarashtra. Who was the husband who was responsible for putting her up? It was Yudhishthira. Yeah, so some of these scenarios are quite complex. There are no easy answers. So the answers we depend on are spiritual answers, because material answers will not satisfy us beyond a certain point. Material answers will always leave us with that feeling of it doesn't seem right, it doesn't feel right. So when you delve into spirituality, the spiritual reasons for what happened is what you actually finally are able to accept that ultimately everything is happening as per Krishna's plan. Does that mean that Draupadi deserved to be destroyed? No. But still, was that particular episode used as an example for us? Yes, certainly. It was used as an example for us. What does dharma really mean? So there are so many complicated layers to dharma. Therefore, Krishna says, because dharma is so complex, the simplest thing is for all jivatmas to simply surrender to me. Then I will take care of them. Yes. Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pro. Any other questions? In the chat. Okay, so the question is, how do we know that Krishna actually wants us to do something or not? This will come over a period of time of doing your sadhana. The more intensely we do our sadhana, the more intensely you will be able to experience Paramatma in your life. He will always guide you to the right decision. So what does that mean for a beginning sadhaka? Just to have trust and faith that Krishna, I'm making a decision. I'm not sure if this is the decision that you want me to make. But please help me, please protect me, please guide me so that I may always be engaged in your service. So that could be one way of how you arrive at a conclusion of what to do. So it's not always that simple and straightforward, these questions. I'm sure there is a deeper meaning behind your question, but certainly, why do good people suffer more? Can I help you rephrase the question a little bit? What do good people do when they suffer? Because if you are able to answer that question, then why do good people suffer more will no longer be important. I will tell you why. A simple analogy, Prabhupada uses this and Acharyas uses as well. Let us say you're going on a boat. Somehow or the other, you've fallen into the ocean and you do not know how to swim. All you're looking for is to be rescued. So when you are fallen out of the boat into the ocean, you are not going to ask, why did I fall? Under what circumstances did I fall? What led to my going into the water? Your only focus is at that time, I want to be rescued. So when good people suffer, there, especially when we are talking about great devotees of the Lord, their mood is, Krishna, help me, save me, protect me. So we don't try to do a analysis of the suffering. Because analyzing why you're suffering is not going to help you reduce your suffering. But understanding how others have handled their suffering, there's great lessons in there for us. But ultimately, if that through that suffering, if you're brought closer to Krishna, because of that suffering that creates dependency on Krishna, then that is exactly what Krishna wants. Yeah. Sometimes through suffering, we get closer to Krishna. Right? That is why Kunti Devi is feeling a little fearful. She's saying, okay, all these years, 13, 14 years, we've suffered. And because we were suffering, we were thinking of you. Now that suffering has ended and we are victorious, my fear is that now I'll forget you. So the more ideal question I feel is, what do good people do when they suffer? What can I learn from their mood, their attitude, their determination? Can I learn something from all those devotees who have suffered? Can you think of any devotee who has not suffered? Can anybody think of any devotee in any scripture that you read who has not suffered? Can anyone give us an example? No, right? There's a beautiful pastime of Narada Muni when he comes to meet Srila Vyasadeva. And Vyasadeva asks him, how did you become Narada Muni? And to that, Narada Muni talks about his previous life, his previous birth. And he says, because of the causeless mercy of these great devotees, I was just a little boy of a maidservant. These Bhakti Vedantis, they came to the ashram and they stayed there for 4 months of Chaturmans. And it was because of their causeless mercy, I got attracted to hearing Harikatha, because that's what they were doing for 4 months. These devotees were just discussing Harikatha, talking about the Lord. And he said, because for those 4 months I heard Harikatha, I got attracted to doing bhakti. And very beautifully Prabhupada explains in the purport, actually not in the purport, in one of the classes Prabhupada has in those set of shlokas where Narada Muni is talking about his previous birth, how he was just a boy of a dasi putra. He tells Vyasadeva, I was just a putra of a dasi, a very lowly servant. So Prabhupada says, in 4 months, from dasi putra to Narada Muni, complete transformation. And do you know how Narada Muni suffered in his previous birth? He was so attracted to doing bhakti, but he did not have a father. His mother was dependent on him. And he tells Vyasadeva, the Lord is so kind. He knew that in my heart that I wanted to do bhakti. So he arranged for my mother to be bitten by a snake. And she died because of that snake bite. Now I was free to follow what I really wanted to do. So at the age of 5, Narada Muni goes in search in his previous birth. He was not Narada Muni then. He goes in search of the truth. This is how devotees see things happening in their life. He's telling Vyasadeva, the Lord arranged for my mother to be bitten by a snake. So I had nothing else left in my life but to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. So a devotee sees the Lord's hand in their life actually helping them. Now you could say he had become an orphan, was he not suffering? Yes, but he was ready to undergo that suffering because he wanted to see the Lord. And in that previous life, he actually gets to see the Lord very briefly. And then when he opens his eyes, the Lord has disappeared. He doesn't get darshan of the Lord again. The Lord says, look, I only gave you a taste of my darshan. You have to perfect your bhakti. And in his next life, he comes as Narada Muni. So a devotee's life takes so many different twists and turns. No? Yes, you're right. Even our Srila Prabhupada suffered so much to establish this institution, to take this knowledge to the United States, and then from there to all the continents. So much Prabhupada suffered. Why? Because if somebody accomplished, Prabhupada himself says this, if somebody accomplished something phenomenal very easily, we don't respect it. We don't admire it. We only admire people who've been through really tough times. Then we can understand that their personality and their character and their inner strength shines. Then we are able to surrender to them. You will not surrender to a guru who is wealthy and who is, who has everything. It's easier to surrender to a guru who has completely sacrificed his life for Krishna, because you see that sacrifice and you understand this is a genuine guru. So that is what Srila Prabhupada did for us. He took on that suffering for you and me. That's what Jesus Christ says when he was on the cross, right? What does he say? Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do. Imagine being on the cross, crucified, and at that point in time, you are not asking the Lord to help me, I am suffering. You are asking the Lord, please forgive those who have put me on this cross. So you will not come across a single devotee in any scripture who has not suffered. That is what makes them phenomenally pure devotees. So even suffering should be seen in the right context. No? Why do only good people suffer? Maybe to set an example for you and me. What to do. When they suffered, what did they do? So we should take that as the only important lesson for us. When great devotees suffered, what did they do? Did they give up? Or did they push on? Correct? Okay. Anyway, very nice question. But yes. Okay. Any further questions? I didn't see any other question. Yes, Prasanna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Whatever we hear, even from Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita, wherever we see, the conclusion is always, to surrender ourselves to the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord, Mataji. So thank you so much, Mataji, for explaining so beautifully. End of every shloka says the same, that, you just surrender and I will take care of you. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Haribol. Yes, thank you. Thank you for your prayers for my mom. So just to let you know, my mother is in the ICU. She's 86 years old. And tomorrow they're planning to do endoscopy. She has some severe internal bleeding. So her hemoglobin count fell to 6 today. So they couldn't do the endoscopy today, but my brother and my sister have arrived and they are at the hospital. So tomorrow morning they're planning to do the endoscopy. Hopefully she will be physically a little bit in a better position, because to do endoscopy also you need to have some amount of strength. So another great example for me personally in my life is my mother. She's a great devotee of Krishna. She always had such faith. My mother also suffered a lot as a young child and then later on in life. But her inner strength and resolve is what really, gives us that clear indication and direction for us on how we should lead our lives, especially for us children. So my other brother is landing from the US in a couple of hours. So somehow or the other, one or both of your parents may be setting a phenomenal example for you on how to lead your life. Very simple, complete faith in Krishna, and not complaining when difficulties come your way, to just accept it and tolerate it, right? So yes, thank you for all of your prayers, and please pray for my mother.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Bol, Hare Krishna. She's a
Definitely
very
she'll,
strong person. Hare Bol.
definitely she'll care, Mataji. I think Krishna will.
I hope so. Whatever Krishna's plan is, we don't know. She's 86.
Actually, you are telling actually she is a very devotee of Krishna, so definitely
Yes.
Krishna will recover her as soon as possible.
Thank you so much. Thank
Actually,
you.
she is 86 also. If she recover also, she'll be suffering a lot. Even though Krishna will definitely recover her we can pray Krishna. And also this group prayers and all, definitely it will work actually.
Definitely, whatever is Krishna's plan for her.
Yeah.
Mataji, I pray for her.
Thank you so much,
She's
Mataji.
my
Hare Bol.
favorite also. Like
Yeah, I think for children, we just don't want to see our parents go through pain. No? So it's painful.
yeah, that's anyway.
No, Mataji. God will
God will
protect her
help
and
Mataji.
saves her.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Please pray tomorrow. Hopefully at 10 o'clock, they'll be able to do the procedure and stop the internal bleeding. Because the internal bleeding is causing a lot of anxiety.
Definitely, God protects her and saves her.
Thank you.
And also, we all pray for her. And I wish for her speedy recovery also, Mataji.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I wanted to take class today because, for me, staying connected to the words of the Lord and Bhagavad Gita have a more calming effect for me. Otherwise, it's a big issue being in the hospital, in the ICU, and seeing so many other people suffer. So I thought, okay, since my brother and sister are there with her tonight, I'll just come and take class, and then maybe tomorrow.
Mataji, my prayers for your mother's quick recovery.
Thank you. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Yeah. You all know how strong she is. You all have seen her in the temple. Yeah. Even Vaikuntega, they say, I think she was sitting in the temple for 4 hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mataji, tomorrow I'll be doing Aarti. I will just pray for your
thank you.
mother to the speed recovery.
Thank you.
I also was seeing my grandfather. His age is when he died, his age was 99. Till then, actually, he was fell down. Even though he was fell down, he used to do his work on his own. He don't want to depend on anybody. Like putting the clothes in the washing machine. If he can't able, he will tell, just can you put. Otherwise, he was very. It's that is also Krishna grace that he was still 99. He was person. So
Yes.